Hey everyone, Assalamu alaikum. It's your host Kelly, and I'm excited to have you join in on another episode here at Rising Convert Experience Podcast. As you know, this podcast focuses on my personal journey, along with discussing experiences and having a candid conversation from a Muslim perspective. So inshallah, for you to get updated and get all the notifications within the podcast and outside of it, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you're listening to this on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, and be sure to stay tuned with me and connected through Instagram and TikTok at Rising Convert. All right, let's get to it. I'm really excited to bring in this new topic of breastfeeding and fasting. Now, alhamdulillah, we just made it through this year of Ramadan, alhamdulillah, 2025, and really this episode is focusing more on my reflections and experiences as I entered last year's Ramadan 2024. And that is because 2024 was the season where I really was breastfeeding and where I was really learning a lot of what it took for a mother to go through the process of producing milk and having to feed their child and being in a vulnerable state, and at the same time going into Ramadan and fasting for the first time. So there's a lot to uncover here, and I'm really excited to share with you all my story because I do believe it's so important to just bring more awareness and dialogue around being a Muslim mama and doing all the things that we do, and on top of that, fasting during the holy month of Ramadan. Now, for me to get started and share about my breastfeeding journey, I do need to give you a little backstory of what it was like in my labor and delivery and what I was diagnosed with during pregnancy, because those are important factors to also consider how my breastfeeding journey started and what complications and emotions also came with it. Labor and delivery. Labor and delivery was a really traumatizing experience for me because at 36 and 6 weeks, I was diagnosed with preeclampsia. And I remember coming out of the hospital and I was really stunned and shocked about what the process was going to look like. Like, I was essentially given medication and prepared my body to be induced, and mentally also trying to stabilize my thoughts and also try to regulate my emotions because I was feeling kind of scared and a little anxious, like this is really happening, it's my first time. And just hearing all about preeclampsia in that one sitting of being in the hospital was very overwhelming. It also sounds really scary because, of course, they give you, the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, and how rare it is, and how they don't really have answers for why a mother gets preeclampsia. Because I was sitting there for a second thinking, like, I'm a very healthy person. I love to exercise. I feel like I eat healthy. I do all the things to take care of myself. But here we are, I walked into the car. I, let my husband know that I was going to be set up to be induced on the Tuesday. We had walked out of the hospital on the Thursday. From Thursday to Tuesday, I was experiencing a lot of preeclampsia symptoms. Now, these are the symptoms that led me to the hospital in the first place. So from Thursday all the way to Tuesday, the day of the induction, I actually ended up in the hospital on that Sunday. And again, that had to do with a lot with the symptoms that I was experiencing, which is like headache, dizziness, confusion, pain, but mainly headaches, and then maybe the odd like blurry spots in my vision. So that was on the Sunday, and it was very taxing already on my body because we were constantly getting checked because of my blood pressure. I had been monitoring my blood pressure with a machine, and everyone was really like scared because it would spike up really high, then it'd get really low, and then it'd be really, really high. So that led us going to the hospital, coming back home, going to the hospital, coming back home that same day on the Thursday, the Friday, the Saturday, and the Sunday. And then Sunday, alhamdulillah, that's when they had said, okay, you are coming in, you're going to be admitted. Like, there's no point of sending you back home, we're going to monitor you. So they proceeded with the same routine, which they were going to induce me on the Tuesday, and that is because they wanted the lead up to be at 37 weeks. So we did that. And within a couple days, I delivered my little baby. Now, there's a lot of feelings after delivering my baby, tears of joy, a sense of relief because I had finally the opportunity to somewhat rest, because the nurses and the doctors made it very clear that I needed some sleep after my body going through all of that, because my blood pressure was really, really high. So having baby out helped, but it didn't necessarily stabilize my blood pressure. So husband came in and basically was holding the reins within the first day and a half that baby was born. Now, this is a big piece of, I guess, the starting point of what my breastfeeding was going to look like. And that is because when I heard the news that, after baby was delivered, that my husband's going to take over and do diapers and do the bottle feed, yes, I felt a sense of relief, but I also didn't realize how that was going to impact my connection and bonding and milk supply very quickly. Now, I'm aware newborns eat or need feeding every 2 to 3 hours. And so they feed constantly. And so I really wasn't thinking about that. I don't think anyone really thinks about these things as a first-time mom. It's just part of learning and just going with the flow. So yeah, because my husband took over, when I then was feeling ready to step in, and I did feel a lot more well-rested, which I'm thankful and grateful for, I realized that there really wasn't anything happening in my body. Like, my body hadn't produced anything. Colostrum, I'm not sure if I'm saying that term right, but that was essentially what was technically supposed to be being produced, and nothing had really been produced. So I was behind, and even the nurses and had noticed, and the doctor was like, it's okay, it takes time, you're early, baby came early. Sometimes some mamas will start producing right away or closer to their due date. Some don't start producing until after. We just got to get you onto this routine of having baby latch on and so on and so forth. Now, as we're getting really into the peak of my breastfeeding exploration and what that was like, so I'm feeling positive. Everyone's telling me it's normal and it's fine. And so I'm happily having baby on me, getting baby adjusted, figuring out the football hold and the carrier hold, and also having baby maybe lay on my chest and having my body, reclined a bit, and just trying to see what works, what doesn't work. It was definitely really awkward. It was really weird for me because I've never done it. And that part was pretty fun. I have to admit, the part was fun. It brought a lot of joy in my life because I knew that I was just learning many things. And that's what it felt like even after we had saw a lactation consultant in the hospital, which was really nice. And she was helping my husband as well with the bottle feeding, because as I was, getting baby comfortable with me and getting used to the latching and the feeding, because I wasn't producing enough, the bottle feeding was still happening. And so the lactation consultant was supporting him and how he can mimic the hold and mimic the bottle so it's similar to the breast and so on. And so that was really helpful, and so we're all feeling pretty good. Until the very last day of us being in the hospital, we had baby there with us, and it became even more apparent that at this point we're just primarily giving baby the bottle because she's getting all the nutrients from the bottle and really nothing from me, because again, I wasn't really producing. It almost just felt like she was now just coming onto me to just start stimulating and sending signals to my body to let it know that we can start the production of milk. So, the days go on. After were released, we had to go back to the hospital because I wasn't feeling well. So I essentially missed a full day of breastfeeding my child because of that. And then, we were released on a Friday. That was a Saturday. We ended up at the hospital. And then on the Sunday, we were at home. But it was very, very tough for me because, again, I was feeling very sick. And at this point, I'm on medications to help reduce my my blood pressure, and I was on like a strict, tight routine for that. So I had my mom and I had my sister who helped out, my husband. We were still figuring out the breastfeeding and formula feeding routine. And so we decided to see another lactation consultant. And so we saw her about 4 times. So in these 4 sessions with the lactation consultant, they were telling us about pumping sessions. They were telling us about, the whole feeding schedule. And they were also telling with us that, mama really needs to like have baby 8 to like 10 or 12 times on me. And when I was like counting at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, I've only had my baby on me probably like 4 to 5 times. And I was just in the middle of like trying to figure out motherhood, trying to get that rest postpartum preeclampsia, which is a whole different story and it's a whole different thing. I guess if you were to compare it to someone else who has never had preeclampsia. And then on top of that, I really started developing strong symptoms of postpartum anxiety and depression. So there were so many things happening within my body. And then I'm like trying to figure out the breastfeeding. And I'm not gonna lie, after that was said to me, where it was known that, baby should be on you more than what you're having it. And like the face that the nurse was giving was not like it was like a worrisome face. It wasn't something that I was expecting. And so I'm not gonna lie, I felt a sense of pressure without her having to say more than that. I felt the pressure and I was like, okay. And I also started thinking about my child's birthright. Like, it is Islamically. Now, it's also Islamically a practice to, do things the best way you can as long as you're in good health, essentially. But I was like, okay, like, Islamically, it's my child's birthright. So I feel like I have to give it 110%. So here I am. At this point, I am going through a vicious cycle of power pumping, setting up session cycles. And for those of you who don't know, it's very uncomfortable, or those of you who maybe probably gone through it will understand when I say that the amount of back pain, shoulder pain, and arm pain that you start feeling, if you're already not in pain from your delivery, it's just intensified. And that was the part that really rocked me, the physical labor that comes with breastfeeding. And the amount of work and effort that I kept having to do every single day to make sure that I was going to be able to even provide some nourishment to my child. And I also then started shifting from, okay, not only do I want to produce, but now I'm focused on that emotional and secure relationship and connection that I'm missing out on. And I'm not gonna lie, these 2 things probably enhanced my feelings when it came to my postpartum anxiety and depression. I was just always feeling jittery. I felt like I was having I definitely was having the shakes at night. And I spoke to a few moms, which did make me feel better throughout that process, where they were saying like, that was me, like I had the shakes, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And it's obviously me just, feeling all the things that I'm feeling and just having everything on top of me. Can't help but feel the amount of pressure that I had to just keep on going and almost like push myself to the limits. It's crazy because I realized, I think about a week and a half after, going through it for a bit, that my body was using so much energy. At this point, when I started seeing it, it felt like a sense of relief. I was like, wow, it's working. And I was pumping and I can see it happening. So I was like, okay, feeling really good about, baby getting milk when it was time to feed. And then, realizing like, okay, this is all worth it. I think it was about another 2 or 3 days later where I realized, okay, I don't think I'm producing enough. And at that point, I felt like then that meant that I hadn't done enough. And that was a really sad part. That was really sad for me. I felt my body deflating. I felt my energy just becoming quite low. My level of confidence of a mother was starting to deplete. And I just felt really insecure about my breastfeeding story. I felt really insecure about the milk supply that I have. And I didn't want to share it with anybody. I felt super nervous to share it with family and friends. I felt super nervous to explain it to my husband. I think this is it. I didn't have the confidence. I just felt like I had failed so deeply. And so then I went back into a vicious cycle that was really mentally depressing, truthfully. There were clock sessions after clock sessions, breastfeeding and pumping, breastfeeding and pumping, awkwardly getting set up, feeling so fatigued, dehydrated. My muscles were like aching and sore, and that was putting me in a really crappy mood. I was like very upset. I would get very angry. I was very sensitive. I was just constantly finding myself complaining, and I felt like at some points too, I couldn't even complain because I felt like I was doing my husband a disservice and I was doing my baby disservice, and I just felt like such a bad mom, and there's just so many things. And I don't think anyone who isn't doing the pumping and the breastfeeding, who hasn't gone through it, understands the amount of time it takes away from the rest of life around you. You are so locked in. I was so locked in because it requires setup. It requires cleaning. It requires awkward positions. It's adding to the physical strain that you already feel. I remember just like sitting there awkwardly with my station. I was at one point sitting at the dining table and I was like, I'm sick of this. And sometimes I'd watch my show and I would make the most out of it, but then you get bored. It's the same thing because you're doing it all day. And then I was like, you know what, let's be cozy. I'll shifted my station to the living space where I had like the nice couch and I had my little corner and it was all good. But again, it's still not enough. Because then what I've realized is that even though I'm putting myself through this vicious cycle again, my milk production is nowhere near what my baby needs. Man, that newborn phase, when they first come out, they feed constantly. And the next thing you know, it's like you're going into your second month and they've now outgrown the 2 ounce that you are producing, which is ultimately what was happening to me. Just to give you a picture, I'd be pumping for about an hour and I'd only barely be producing 2 ounce, barely. And then I'm like stressed because I'm like, do I have enough time between my finished pumping session? Will I have enough milk to produce to give to baby to like latch onto? So anyways, just to kind of give you some perspective and insight on how that was like for me. So eventually fast forward, in this breastfeeding part of my motherhood, I recognize, and I remember having this conversation with my husband where, okay, you know what, I'm going to produce what I produce and that's all I'm going to do. I'm now going to be like the cow who like builds up the milk and then I pump it out of me later and it'll be stored in the fridge and then we'll just feed that to baby. So that way baby's getting that baby mama's milk, and we'll slowly try to see if we can reduce the formula. And that was the plan. That was the game plan. You know, after some time had gone by, we realized like, okay, like this is good. We're feeling good. We got mama's milk. And then we had a great routine where, you know, during the day she was just getting what I pumped. And then at night she would get me. She would be latched onto me. And so that was enough for me. It was such a nice feeling. It took some pressure off once we kind of got to that, I guess, routine. And then now we're going to get on to the fasting part, Ramadan. So I delivered baby in January. Ramadan 2024 hit around like mid-March or so. And that's when things started really shifting for me again. I started feeling extra anxious. At this point, I was already working through my postpartum anxiety and depression. I started feeling the jitters again. My stomach was turning. I can't even explain it. I almost felt like I was losing sensation of my body. Like I had no control leading up to the days of Ramadan. Like the closer it was getting, the more I felt like my heart sinking, or sometimes it was beating so fast that I felt like it was beating out of my chest. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was just almost like just in circle with my thoughts. And so I remember 2 days prior to Ramadan, my husband and I are getting ready for bed. You know, we're doing our nightly routine, and as he's getting into his side of the bed, he comes over and I think he may have noticed something that was off. And I was definitely nervous. I don't know why. I think again it's just maybe in my thoughts. I was definitely nervous to tell him that how I really wasn't looking forward to Ramadan, and the amount of fear that I had about losing what I've built, what I've worked so hard for, just because I'm going to have to fast. And saying those words out loud made me feel guilty as a Muslim, because everyone looks forward to Ramadan. Ramadan's such a special month. It's a monumental time during the whole year of being in the practice of who you are as a Muslim. And this is ultimately, like, I guess you can call it a highlight. It's like Christmas, if you want to give it something to compare it to. Everyone looks forward to Christmas. Everyone loves everything that Christmas brings. For us as Muslims, like, this is Ramadan for us. And so, yeah, I just felt a sense of guilt as a Muslim, not specifically as a mama, but as a Muslim. And I almost felt like it was showing the lack of trust and faith that I had in God. Truthfully, that's what it felt like for me. And so he, came over and he's listening, and I broke down. I broke down crying. I think once I let it out, I had to feel everything. And I was like, this laborious part, this part that took so much time is now going to be gone. Like, it's going to go to waste. It's going to just be washed away very, very quickly. And the reason I thought that was because I remember the doctors and the nurses that I talked to, and even my therapist at the time, they would constantly say, like, just start preparing yourself, because what you have right now for your milk supply is already low. At this point, I was very happy with the fact that, I had what I had with my little one. And at the same time, I also realized that I just wasn't a heavy producer. That just wasn't the way my body was working. And I just was accepting of that, and I was more than happy again, right? If anything, I felt like I was just really enjoying and grateful, alhamdulillah, for this glorious part and connection that I was able to have. But just to know that, you're working and you're pushing yourself so hard, and then you just realize, like, whoa, an abrupt stop, because before you know it, this month is coming and we have to fast. So it's exhausting to think about it. And so fast forward, it's day 1 of Ramadan. I'm talking about my plan. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to not fast consecutively. I'm going to just have to really make the most of the days that I do fast, and really just try to pump and continue to stimulate my body regardless, even if there's really nothing coming out. But the part that I didn't expect to happen was really the part where the emotional attachment that came with breastfeeding on my end. So for the first part, I kept focusing on baby's connection and what they're missing out. But really what hit me during the holy month of Ramadan was the attachment and the intense emotions that was going to come with me losing that attachment during the holy month of Ramadan. So, fast forward, it's in the middle of Ramadan. I decided that, I'm going to just listen to my body. The thing that really helped me pull through was to constantly always make du'as, make prayers around strength, around patience, to put a lot of my trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ultimately, for me, in the middle of Ramadan, I've realized that going through the vicious cycle again of constantly pumping and thinking about my clock sessions and what that's going to do to me, it wasn't sustainable. I knew it's something that I didn't want to go back to. It was a really dark time whenever I went through those vicious cycles. And so feeling already so drained, feeling already helpless about the situation, the only thing I could have done, and what really did support me, was that mental shift. And so deepening my connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through a lot of prayer was definitely one way of doing it. And then the other thing that I can focus on is actually doing all the things that is encouraged and promoted for Muslim mamas during the holy month of Ramadan. So hydration, thinking a lot about what I'm drinking, what I'm consuming, thinking about the things that are going to benefit me also emotionally. And so these were things that I really put an emphasis on. And so people talk a lot about coconut water, and that's not actually something that I leaned into. For me, it was just making sure that I was finishing my entire giant water bottle that I actually got from Lululemon. I believe it's a 36 ounce. It's those big chunky ones with the handles. I knew that if I finished that before I went to bed, then I knew I was doing the best that I could. And then really just coming to peace with the efforts and everything that I did, and just telling myself that it's enough. Because there's really only so much that you can do. But pumping in general, like, I still did continue. I just didn't put so much pressure on me to the point that it was taken away from my spiritual journey that I was working also so hard to have in the middle of Ramadan, when I was realizing that there was so much more to life, and that my mental health really does come first in this relationship that I'm trying to build with baby, because as everyone says, you have to look out for yourself before you can take care of somebody else. And like, you know what, whatever happens. That's actually what having faith is. That's actually what trust can look like. And it really then made me feel and believe that whatever was meant to be is meant to be. As cheesy as that sounds, but really it just allowed me to understand what it felt like, or what it can feel like, to fully put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, the carrying on the last half of the holy month of Ramadan, yes, I was drained. Yes, I felt exhausted. For me, accepting, who I am as a mom, who I am as a Muslim mom, and what that actually means, really helped with the pain that I was feeling, and allowing myself to really kind of like sit deep into my sorrows is also part of my healing process, and understanding that, motherhood does come with its challenges. Being a Muslim in general comes with its challenges, and this is a challenge and trial that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me. And so, alhamdulillah, like, I did finish Ramadan. I think 2 or maybe 3 moments where I decided to not fast for 2 days in a row, and that was really helpful with my milk supply. At the end of the holy month of Ramadan, coming into Eid, I felt a little bit more happy. I felt a little more lighter, and I just embraced my child so deeply, because she essentially also pulled through as a baby, and it was really wonderful. Did my milk supply get really low? Yeah, it really did. At that point, there was really no pumping sessions during the day. It just wasn't worth it. At that, it was maybe a week after Ramadan had ended where I was like, this really isn't working out as much anymore. Like, I'll pump here and there, but at some point we're just like, there's no point. It was, there just wasn't enough. And so essentially somehow I trained my body where it's upon Allah, like I was able to have enough milk at night, so I would do some night feedings with her, and I held on to that. And actually we went as long as we could, and it was longer than I expected, alhamdulillah. So we went as far as 8 months, but by 8 months we were really at this point just pushing it, because she got so used to the bottle so quickly, and I don't blame her. That's primarily what she was feeding onto since the beginning, and for a majority of her feeds. So, but yeah, alhamdulillah, like, it worked out really well, and I'm really happy with just the results that came out of that holy month of Ramadan 2024, the learnings, the growth for me personally as a Muslim, but also as a mother, and also in parenthood with my husband, having those deep conversations, really getting vulnerable, and then also allowing myself to feel what I needed to feel as I'm exploring this specific part, this laborious part of motherhood. So now, inshallah, going on to the future, inshallah, when we expand our family, I'm more aware and prepared of what it's like to have a newborn as we're leading up to the holy month of Ramadan. Not gonna lie, we did not plan it. I remember when we had baby, or when we were about to have baby, I was like, right, Ramadan is like not far from our due date. If anything, it was actually supposed to be closer, because baby came early. She was supposed to be due in February, not in January. And so we don't think about these things. But, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of all planners. I'm just super grateful and happy that we have our little one. This year, Ramadan 2025, it did rock me in a whole different world. That's for another story. And I'm just so grateful for it. I just shout out to all the mamas from previous generations where mental health wasn't as of a big deal as it is now, and who really pull through, who have so much practice and so much experience and have shared a lot of their thoughts and a lot of their stories with me. Shout out to those mamas who have gone through what I've gone through and have pulled through. We are just so strong. We are so incredible. Like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us and built us so different. And it's amazing. SubhanAllah, it's amazing what you can do. Like, I really felt like I pushed myself to the limits. At some points, it was a bit scary, but in other points, it was a way of showing what I'm capable of, what this body it has the ability to do, and how it can show up for me and for everyone else around me. So alhamdulillah. Anyways, that's it, everyone. That's my breastfeeding and fasting journey. I really hope this is something that can bring some perspective, some lightness, some insight to what it's like to be a Muslim mama, breastfeeding and fasting, having two big components that can affect your physical health and have an impact on your physical and emotional and mental well-being. And so inshallah, this is something that can be positive for you, or just something that can maybe bring some peace in mind, or just a little maybe of knowledge of what it was like for someone to go through something like this. But anyways, I would love to hear your comments. Would love to hear your thoughts. If you have any advice for any future mamas out there who are, going through fasting and breastfeeding, or if you've maybe gone through preeclampsia and you also went through the postpartum anxiety, depression, or you just went through the postpartum for preeclampsia, write it in the comments. Connect with me through, again, Instagram and TikTok at Rising Convert. And inshallah, we can just share knowledge with each other and just make it ease. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, mamas. Sending lots of love and positive vibes. Take care, and inshallah, I'll catch you in the next one. Assalamu alaikum.